Hello viewers, in this video I am going to talk about the band theory of solids, the motion of electron inside a periodic potential. In previous videos we have seen the classical free electron theory and quantum free electron theory, and even classical and quantum free electron theories are applicable only for metals. So we cannot extend that particular theory to insulators or semiconductors. So the theory did not throw any light on insulators and semiconductors. So if you take the quantum free electron theory given by Arnold Sommerfeld, there you have only metals. Uh, it is in comparison to classical free electron theory gave better results, but still it is not applicable to insulators or semiconductors. And the values predicted by quantum free electron theory also, they are not that accurate. Still failures are there, but we are not going to discuss the failures. We are directly jumping into the next article, which is the band theory of solids. This band theory of solids was first given by Felix Bloch. Bloch, Bloch, in the year 1929. This is sometimes referred as zone theory of solids also. How this came into existence? We'll explain it through a figure. You can see, if you recall the basic electrostatics, the elementary electrostatics, if you have a charge Q, here I am taking positive charge, you can take even negative charge also. If you take a charge Q, then at a distance r units away from the charge, if you choose a point P, there you can define electric potential V of R at point P, right? So this V of R, the electric potential due to this charge, is given by plus Q divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 R. It is a scalar quantity, there is no direction associated with it. So Q by 4 pi epsilon 0 R. So if you want to explain the potential V of R as a function of R, so here it is R equal to infinity. Similarly, R equal to infinity on the other side. So the potential goes to infinity and it drops like this, and symmetrically on the other side it goes like this. This is the potential, right? Now if you want to explain the potential energy, so the potential energy of the electron, potential energy of electron due to this, see, this potential is due to positive ion. So you can imagine it like this. So at every positive ion's side, you have a mountain, a hill, a very tall mountain, and an electron is just flying like this. So it acts like a barrier. That's what I mean. So this is the potential due to a positive ion P. And if you want to write the potential energy of electron due to this positive ion is, after all, V, or let me write this as U. U is the energy, potential energy, is minus E times the potential V of R. So it is nothing but minus E square. So here I'll call this as E. Why? Because the charge is E, elementary charge. So I'll take this as plus E. So this E is nothing but E into E square divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 R. Clearly shows that the potential energy of the electron goes like this. So if you just want to sketch this, I'm drawing it as in a smaller form, not this much big. So if this is representing the U of R, then this graph, it's a negative side, so everything must be plotted in this third quadrant, as it is a constant 1 by R, and when R tends to 0, it goes to minus infinity. So this is the minus infinity location, and when R tends to plus infinity, it becomes to 0. So this graph will go like this, and symmetrically on the other side you will see this kind of graph. So this is the potential energy of the electron, right? This is the potential experienced by the electron, right? So electron watches this potential and its potential energy is going to be like this. So wherever you have positive ions site, there the electron is going to feel this kind of potential. Okay, now same things are plotted over here. So instead of V equal to 0, I'll call it as U of R, which is the potential energy of the electron. And here it becomes U of R, it becomes U of R, same thing, U of R everywhere, right? So I'm actually sketching the potential energy of the electron at every location of the atom, positive ion. So at every positive ion, electron just feels this kind of trap. So it gets slowed down, and if at all it gets out of the trap, once again it travel and it may encounter another trap like that. Well, this picture might be somewhat confusing. Why all these things are drawn like this? It's actually one-dimensional lattice. See, if you look at a two-dimensional lattice, these dots may represent the positive ions. So these are actually positive ions, right? So inside any solid, there may be positive ions. Some valence electrons may be there, which are loosely bound. So these valence electrons may be, or loosely bound electrons may be coming out of this lattice, and they may be roaming freely somewhere like this. They may be going this side or that side. So these free electrons are going to encounter some kind of potential. So that potential, I am actually choosing only one row of atoms. You can see I am considering only this. This is not considered. Actually, atoms are in three-dimensional array, but for simplicity, I am taking one-dimensional case. So this represents a one-dimensional array of electrons, array of ions, array of ions. There, the electrons are going to feel this kind of potential energy. Okay, so this is the motion of electron inside a periodic potential. Based on this periodic potential model, Felix Bloch gave a theorem called Bloch theorem, and that particular theory is what you call as band theory of solids. Now, what is the modification done? Why? Sorry, it's a Felix. There is a correction. Felix Bloch, Felix, Felix Bloch. So, what is the modification done by Felix Bloch compared to the quantum free electron theory given by Arnold Sommerfeld? There, the influence of positive ion was completely neglected. In the case of Arnold Sommerfeld's model, no idea of a positive ion. It was simply absent. Electrons were freely roaming. But in the case of Felix Bloch model, zone theory or band theory, the presence of positive ion is considered. So positive ion is definitely going to influence the electron's motion, right? So that is the modification. I'm going to erase the board. I'll proceed further. Okay. So when the electron moves in a periodic potential, it is going to experience this kind of hills and mountains, valleys, hills and valleys like this. So the electron is going to see this kind of motion, this kind of potential at every location of the atom. Now, Felix Bloch gave a theorem for this electron. That is what we call as Bloch theorem. What does this Bloch theorem say? Bloch theorem says that electron motion inside a periodic potential will admit solutions of the form psi k of x, which are plane waves, which are modulated by some function that has the periodicity which is same as that of the lattice. Solutions of the form e power ikx plus or minus. These are what we call as plane wave like solutions. Plane wave like solutions. So the solution to Schrodinger wave equation for the problem of electron in a periodic potential admits this kind of solutions along with a modulating function, a modulating function which is uk of x. See, this uk of x cannot be anything. It has to satisfy a certain condition. What he said is uk of x plus a is equal to uk of x. What is this a? Where a is the lattice period. That is, if we choose this as an ion, this as an ion, this as an ion, the gap between the positive ions is A. Positive ion gap is A. Similarly, here there may be a positive ion, so this gap is A. So he simply said that electron inside a periodic potential is also a kind of a plane wave, but the plane wave is not just a plane wave. It has some modulating function. In mathematics, modulation means multiplication by something, some function. So still you are going to have this kind of plane waves, but there's going to be some multiplicative factor like uk of x. And what is this uk of x? This uk of x cannot be anything. It has to satisfy certain condition. uk of x plus a must be equal to uk of x, so it must be a periodic function with the period that is same as that of the lattice, right? So mathematically, block theorem can be stated like this. So it is going to admit solution psi k of x of the form uk of x e power plus or minus ikx, such that uk of x plus a is equal to uk of x. This is the periodic function, periodic modulating function uk of x, right? And e power ikx plus or minus, these are plane waves. So how do you understand this physically? If you are traveling on a flat road, let us say this is the flat space, and when I'm traveling like this or like this, my wave will be moving in a plane without any disturbances. Suddenly, if it encounters a bump, definitely this wave is going to have similar kind of disturbance. So, if you have several such bumps, let us say this is a speed breaker, a person is just riding a bicycle. You may think like this. The fellow is just sitting on the bicycle, just he or she is driving the bicycle. So whenever this bicycle jumps onto this, it is going to experience a bump. So this height is going to increase like this, and in between the bumps the cycle will be quite normal, there is no difference. And once again, when it encounters another bump, it is going to have a displacement in the lateral direction. So the disturbance experienced by this, if you can imagine the cyclist as an electron, electron is going to see this kind of bumps. So electron wave function is going to be disturbed by some function with the periodicity a. So here the bumps are separated from its neighbors by a distance of a. So here also these positive ions are separated from the neighbors by a distance of a. So electron wave function is going to be modulated or disturbed by a function, some function which is uk of x. Here you can imagine this as some kind of uk of x. Assume that these bumps are flat. uk of x is very small. In that case, you may not feel any jerk. You may not feel any disturbance when you are riding a cycle. If the speed breaker has very little height, you may not even feel it. But if I make the bumps larger, you will feel much larger jerks, much larger bumps, right? So this uk of x is going to have the effect, its amplitude and also its separation or period, right? So this is what we call as Felix Bloch theorem, and this is the fundamental statement. And there is a corollary for this. You can explain the same Bloch function in a different manner. This Bloch theorem, it can be stated in a different way. I'm going to do that. Please pause the video and I'll erase some portions. Consider psi k of x plus a. So what am I going to do is, in place of x, everywhere I'll be writing x plus a. So it is going to be uk of x plus a, because it was uk of x. Now I'm writing x plus a in place of x, into e power plus or minus ik. In place of x, here I am writing a. So if I write it like this, this is as per Bloch theorem, psi k of x plus uk of x plus a is uk of x. So in place of this, I can write uk of x. And in place of this, I can write e power plus or minus ikx into e power plus or minus ika. So if you combine both of them, after all, this is nothing but your psi k of x. Psi k of x is after all uk of x into e power plus or minus ikx, right? So this is equivalent to psi of x into e power plus or minus ika. So this is another form of Bloch theorem. You can state any one of them equally. These two are equal, right? So this is about Bloch theorem. This duo Kronig and Penny, they have tried to make some manipulation to these curved potentials. We saw this kind of curved potentials inside a solid. So these are the locations of positive ions, and this is what real potential. Really, it happens like this. Electron feels this. But practically, it is not possible to do, and it's not possible to solve the Schrodinger wave equation in these curved potentials unless you specify a boundary. As it is one dimensional, if you can say at x equal to 0 to at x equal to L, this is the potential. At x equal to L to at x equal to so and so, if this is the potential, like that, if you can define, you can proceed. But unfortunately, here it is not possible. At every point, the potential is continuously changing. At every point of, if you call this as R, at every R, the potential is changing. So you cannot define the periodic function so easily. So to modify this, Kronig and Penny, what they did is they have assumed rectangular barrier. So wherever you have curve, they have replaced it with a rectangular barrier, identical barriers. It's going to be something like this. So the pattern repeats, right? So this is the position. Of course, in one dimension, you may call it as X. So if you can choose this, these are rectangular barriers. If you can choose this as X equal to 0 origin, this is going to be some X equal to A, let us say. And if you imagine this width as some B, this point is going to be X equal to A plus B, because this is origin. From here to here, the distance was A and this distance was B. So the total distance will be X equal to A plus B. Similarly, this point's coordinate will be X equal to minus B, because I chose X equal to 0 as this point origin. So origin's left hand side, the width is B. So width B left hand side. So I can take it as X equal to minus B. So this is the type of rectangular barriers which they have taken, and they have divided the problem into region 1, region 2 and region 3. So three different regions they have chosen, 1, 2, 3, and in these three regions they have tried to solve the Schrodinger wave equation. That's what you call as Kronig-Penney model. I will erase some of the portions. Please try to understand this picture. You have three regions. I'll choose only this portion, and rest of the things I'll erase, and I'll try to solve the Schrodinger wave equation there. So the real curved potentials are replaced with rectangular barriers. This is what the modification done by Kronig and Penny. I'll draw this in the corner. So like this, here also once again the potential is V naught and the width was some B. So everywhere the width of the barrier is B. In between you have a gap of A, and here the V for electron is 0, and here the V equal to V naught. So this kind of barriers were assumed by Kronig and Penny, and in this we are going to solve the region 1. So if you try to solve Schrodinger wave equation in region 1, implies, E psi, I'll take as psi 1 because it's region 1, is equal to minus h cross square by 2m dou square by dou x square plus V acting on psi. This is the Schrodinger time independent wave equation. Because there is no variation of energy of electron with the time, we take the Schrodinger time independent case. And here in this case, we know V equal to 0, region 1, right? And hence, this equation takes the form E psi 1 is equal to minus h cross square by 2m dou square psi 1 by dou x square. That's all. 0 is gone. So if you pull it to the left hand side and just you cross multiply with this, instead of taking that, first you cross multiply this 2me by h cross square and pull it to the other side. So it becomes dou square psi 1 by dou x square plus 2me by h cross square into psi 1 is equal to 0. So this is the equation obtained from the region 1. Now you may call this as k square, alpha square, etc. In some textbooks you will find it as k1 square. In some textbooks you will find it as alpha square. I am proceeding with alpha square. Notion is really not that important. You can call with anyone. So this is alpha square. So alpha square is 2me by h cross square. So alpha equal to root 2me by h cross square. Please remember this. Therefore, the solution for this second order partial differential equation is going to be psi 1 of x is equal to some a sine alpha x plus b cos alpha x, or you can equally write this as some a dash e power I alpha x plus some b dash e power minus I alpha x. See, these two are equally good. You can use any one of them, right? Fine. This is one solution. Now, if you try to do the same, solve the Schrodinger wave equation in region 2. In this region, if you try to solve the Schrodinger wave equation, same E, I'll call this as psi 2 because the region is 2, wave function of the electron will be psi 2 is equal to minus h cross square by 2m dou square by dou x square. See, in place of V, the potential in this region, what is the potential energy of the electron in this region? Is it not V naught? Earlier it was 0, now in this case, when you are talking about this region, if you want, you can write the potential also. I did not write, but you can understand from the picture itself. It is clear that between x equal to 0 to x equal to a, v equal to 0. You can write this: v of x is equal to 0 for 0 less than or equal to x less than or equal to a, and it is equivalent to v naught for the regions a less than or equal to x less than or equal to a plus b, or equally you can write in between this and this. It's also equal to v0 from minus b less than or equal to x less than or equal to 0, right? So these are the potential variations. Of course, mathematically I have shown earlier, but just for the sake of question answer writing, I gave this here. So in this region, the potential energy of the electron is just v naught this times psi 2, and we'll make a manipulation. We'll take everything to the left hand side and rewrite this. Anyway, this will be 2m, so you can, if you want, you can write one more step. So it is going to be minus h cross square by 2m dou square psi 2 by dou x square. I am taking this to the left hand side, plus e minus v naught times psi 2 is equal to 0, or by multiplying with sorry, this is going to be positive and I have taken to the other side, it becomes positive, so plus h cross square. Or if you multiply by 2m by h cross square, this goes to the other side, other term as the dou square psi 2 by dou x square plus 2m by h cross square into e minus v naught times psi 2 is equal to 0. Here a small manipulation. Generally, the electron will feel the presence of the barrier only when its total energy is less than the potential energy V naught. What I mean is, if the electron's total energy is higher, it can simply pass over the barrier and it doesn't feel the presence of the barrier. It feels the presence of the barrier only when E is less than V naught, right? So as E is less than V naught, I'll write it in the other way because this is the negative term. I will write this in a different way. So let me write it here. In continuation to this, I am writing here. So it is going to be dou square psi 2 by dou x square minus 2m by h cross square into v naught minus e acting on psi 2 is equal to 0. Now I'll call this bracket term as some beta. Please pause the video. I'll be calling this as beta, as I know already this is alpha. Of course, this is alpha square. This is going to be beta square. Please pause the video. If you call beta square is equal to 2m by h cross square into e minus, sorry, v naught minus e, v naught minus e psi 2. Of course, that's all. This is what I'm calling as beta square, and similarly alpha square is equal to 2m e by h cross square. That's all. This is alpha and that is beta. Now you can proceed by doing the Schrodinger wave equation in region 3 also. But if you keep on doing like this, you are going to have so many equations with so many solutions. Actually, I forgot to mention, if you keep this as beta square, the solution will be, so solution to Schrodinger equation in region 2 will be beta square, as the solution is, let me write it once again. So it is going to be dou square psi 2 by dou x square minus beta square psi 2 is equal to 0. Therefore, solution will be psi 2 of x is equal to some c e power beta x plus d e power minus beta x. This is one way of writing, or equally you may write it as some c dash sine h beta x plus d dash cos h beta x. Please try to understand. If you have this second order equation with a negative term, you get sin hx and cos hx are equally e power positive quantity, e power negative quantity without any I complex number. Whereas if you have a plus, you will be getting oscillatory like solutions e power I something, and similarly sin hx, sin x and cos x, right? So this is regarding the second region. If you can remember these solutions, uh, you can go for the third, but in the third region we are not going to solve. What we are going to do is, we use the block theorem. Recall what block theorem says is, block theorem says psi of x plus a is equal to psi of x into e power plus or minus ika. This is what block theorem's corollary says. It means if you have a solution of this region, it can be connected to another region whose period is this. So if you have a period of A, in this case it's not period A, it is something different. You can see this structure is going to repeat after a separation of A plus B. Please try to understand more. If you want to repeat the structure, see after this x equal to A plus B, once again you will have an empty space of width A. After that you will have another barrier once again, right? So the structure is going to repeat after a distance of a plus b. So in this case the period is x equal to a plus b. So you can write the solution psi 3 of x. This is using block theorem, right? Using block theorem, what we can do is psi 3 of x is nothing but it's something like psi of x plus a. So the solutions to this region is nothing but solution to this region times e power of that separation, right? So it is nothing but, this is the psi 2. So psi 2 of x into e power plus or minus I k. It's not a, in this case it is a plus b, because after this much period only it is going to repeat. Okay, now in this case the atoms are separated by a distance of a plus b, not a. So finally we got psi 3, psi 2, psi 1. Anyway, you know psi 2 of x is already this, so I'll write it as a c e power beta x plus d e power minus beta x times e power plus or minus ik a plus b. Observe, we have got c, d, a, b, four unknown constants are there, and we have got three wave functions psi 1, psi 2, psi 3. So three wave functions with four unknowns. If you apply the boundary conditions which are given by the quantum mechanics principles, that psi must be continuous, psi must be single valued, the first order derivative of psi must be also continuous. So these assumptions were already given, the characteristics of wave function, right? So using that you can arrive at a condition. This we are not going to do. Of course, it's not required. Even in the exam, it is not required. Just you can directly take the equation. So Kronig and Penny, they did this huge exercise, and finally, by mixing all these equations according to the fundamentals of quantum mechanics, they have arrived at an equation which I am going to write it on the board. Please pause the video, take it. Next one is the Kronig-Penny equation. After solving for unknown coefficients A, B, C, D, one gets what we are going to get, that is beta square minus alpha square by 2 alpha beta sine alpha A into sine H beta B. This is one term, plus cos alpha A cos H cos alpha A, cos H B beta or beta B is equal to cos K A, not K, yeah, cos K A plus B. See, you have to by heart this expression, Amma. This is what they have arrived by solving the determinant. They have taken a four different algebraic equations which are obtained from the three different wave functions. Finally, they have arrived at this expression. This is the Kronig-Penney equation. Please be you have to by heart this in the exam. This is the Kronig-Penney equation. This equation is difficult to solve. So what they did is from here, as they could not proceed further, so they have taken the Schrodinger wave equations, they have solved for some algebraic equations, and finally this was the end product. They could not proceed further. So instead of breaking heads, they have tried to apply some approximations. So here it starts with approximations. What are the approximations to solve these equations? They have assumed that the rectangular barriers are replaced with Dirac delta functions. This Dirac delta function you will study in signals and systems, right? This Dirac delta functions are something like spikes. Let me draw this. What is a Dirac delta function? It's not a part of this physics course, but let me explain what is a Dirac delta function. If this is a delta of x, Dirac delta, and this is x at x equal to 0, a small spike like this. So delta of x is equal to 0 for x not equal to 0 goes to infinity for x equal to 0. This is what you call as Dirac delta function. Mathematically speaking, the area inside this small narrow curve is always 1 unit. The area is constant. So if you try to expand the area, height decreases, width increases. And if you try to compress this area, height increases to infinity and width tends to 0. This is what we mean by Dirac delta function. Let me erase this. So using such Dirac delta functions, they have assumed these barriers. So what they thought is these barriers will go, if they try to compress this barrier, it goes to infinity, the height goes to infinity, and width width tends to 0, or if the width is not tending to 0, height becomes finite. This is what we mean by Dirac delta function. So these Dirac delta functions, what happens is V naught will tend to infinity as B tends to 0, and the product V naught times B is always a constant, right? It is not going to vary. So this is what we call as Dirac delta function potentials, and with this assumption they have proceeded further. So we know we are discussing in the limit B tending to 0. So here we have to substitute the B tending to 0 case. That part I'll do as the space is not sufficient. I'll erase this, and once again I'll use the expression. So I'm going to erase all these, let me rewrite this here because I'll be needing them. So beta is equal to 2m by h cross square v naught minus e, and alpha square is equal to 2m e by h cross square. These things are really required for me. And please remember, I am using the condition v naught tends to infinity as b tends to 0, leaving v naught be equal to constant. This is Dirac delta function. So I'll erase this. And remember, I'll be writing this expression, and this expression need to be solved with limit b tending to 0. I'll rewrite this. How to rewrite this? Let's calculate beta square minus alpha square. If you calculate this, beta square minus alpha square, this is 2m by h cross square into v naught minus e minus 2m by h cross square just e. If you further substitute this here, it is 2m by h cross square into v naught minus 2e, right? It is approximately equal to 2m v naught by h cross square. Why? As v naught tends to infinity for b tending to 0. We are going to study in the limit b tending to 0. Everything is going to happen with b tending to 0. As b tends to 0, this v naught is very bigger, And as V naught is bigger, V naught minus 2E is still bigger. Why? Because the E is very small compared to V naught. So if E is small, V naught minus 2E is also still larger quantity. So I can approximate like this. So this first numerator term becomes this. And we'll make some manipulation. We'll rewrite the term in the following way. So I am going to write this as beta square minus alpha square into sine alpha A by alpha A. I'll be writing this alpha here, and I have added an A. And as I have multiplied by A, I'll write A here. So I'm multiplying and dividing by A. There is no difference. Of course, I'll use the 2 here. I don't take the 2. And other thing is sine h beta b divided by, as I have a beta here, I'll be writing the beta, and as I need a b, I'll write b here. I'll also multiply with b in the numerator. So let me write the b here itself. So please try to understand, I have multiplied by a divided by a, I have multiplied by b divided by b. So I'm back with the same term. These are intended only to simplify the expression. And rest of the expressions are very easy. So only the first term, the bracket term, I am writing in this form. My attention is not on the others. The others are very easy to understand if you focus here. Now you try to calculate the limit b tending to 0. Remember, as the b tends to 0, v naught goes to infinity, right? So I'll consider this. You know, beta square minus alpha square. Already beta square minus alpha square is 2m v naught by h cross square. So this implies 2m v naught divided by h cross square divided by 2 multiplied by AB into sine alpha A by alpha A. This is a constant term. We don't have to take care of this while doing this. Sine h beta B by beta B. We have to check this under the limit b tending to 0. This is what we mean by Dirac delta function potential. So the potentials are very narrow and spike-like potentials. So in this limit, please try to understand, as b tends to 0, v naught tends to infinity. So you may think that v naught blows to infinity. No, here there is a facility. V naught is there and b is there. What is our assumption? Is it not v naught b constant? V naught b is not going to raise to infinity. The product is always constant. So if you focus your attention here, this is just m by h cross square, and v naught b is a constant. So this term survives even if the limit b tending to 0, right? Okay. In the limit b tending to 0, this is not 0. Please remember, you don't have to substitute because v naught b is always constant. So both of them are simply escaped from this term. Now, anyway, this term is not having any limit. You have to focus on this term. So your focus is now on limit b tending to 0 sine h beta b divided by beta b. You know, when you put b equal to 0 here, numerator sine h 0 is 0, and of course in the denominator also beta tending to b tending to 0 0. So it is a 0 by 0 form. So L'Hospital's rule you can apply. So L'Hospital's rule, which says that the derivative of this by derivative of this with the same limit. So sine h b beta's limit, sine h b beta's derivative is actually cos h b beta. So it is going to be cos h beta b, because the derivative is with respect to b, and inner derivative will be beta because it's not just b, it is b beta. So the constant comes outside, divided by b beta derivative with respect to b. It is going to be just constant b, right? So in the limit b tending to 0, now you can check. Anyway, beta gone. You are left with cos h b beta. You know, cos hx with x tending to 0 is 1. So simply this term drops. You don't have to consider this. So this term gone, and this term is a constant. So only this term survives. Now, anyway, you can check it here in the limit b tending to 0. We have a cos h b beta here also. So this term also becomes 1, and cos alpha a survives. And on the right hand side, as you send the b to 0, this becomes cos ka. I repeat, this first term becomes only this constant times sine alpha a by alpha a. This term is gone, it's 1. Whereas the second term cos h b beta is 1, as in the limit b tending to 0, it is only cos alpha a. And in the limit b tending to 0, this term is cos ka. So that is the final Kronig-Penney equation. Please copy this. I'm going to erase it. Pause the video. Okay. So final expression. So the final expression will be 2 gone m v naught b into a by h cross square into sine alpha a by alpha a into sine h. No, no, sine is not there. Anyway, it's gone. So first term is only this plus the second term as cos h is gone. Cos alpha a is equal to cos k a plus b. B gone. We have only cos k a. This k is coming from the Bloch theorem, right? Alpha and beta we are already aware of. Alpha is a constant, beta is another constant, right? So finally, I'm going to erase this, and after doing this big exercise, we have arrived at this expression, and in this expression, there are several parameters to be understood. The term V naught B is called the scattering, or no, it's the strength of the barrier. Sorry, it is the strength of the barrier. So it's representing the strength of the barrier, and this entire constant mv naught ab by h cross square is sometimes referred as P, which is the scattering power of the barrier. Right? With this, we can write entire thing as P sine alpha A by alpha A plus cos alpha A is equal to cos Ka. This is the transcendental equation which we need to solve. So after doing this big exercise, finally we have arrived at this position, and by solving this, you can arrive at the bands. See, this is a transcendental equation. If you want to solve this, you have to take the left hand side, plot it on one graph paper, and on the same graph paper, you have to plot the right hand side also. So wherever they intersect, in those regions, you can expect this P sine alpha A by alpha A plus cos alpha A is equal to cos Ka. And this graph, I'm plotting the left hand side, which is P sine alpha A by alpha A plus cos Ka. And here I'll be taking some arbitrary angle. So you may take it as alpha A. So as a function of alpha A, I'm plotting the left hand side. This is P sine alpha by alpha. This is the sinc function, which we have seen in the single slit Fraunhofer diffraction. If you plot this alone, you are going to see this kind of variation. It's a quickly dying out term. Only near alpha A equal to 0, this will be larger. As you go away from that, it falls very quickly. And if you plot this function, it is always oscillating cos function, right? So when you add both of them, let me add like this. So when I add both of them at this point, as 0 is matching with 0, the function still rises further. And in the remaining points, as the contributions by this are negligible, it is going to be something like cost function, normal cost function. So when you overlap these two, the function is going to be just like sine alpha by alpha near the center, and as you move away, it is going to be just like a cost function. That's what I'm going to plot now. So here, the behavior is so if you look at this graph, let me do some manipulation here. Some things are not right. like this. So this kind of behavior is shown by the left hand side curve. So left hand side will follow this behavior. Now the right hand side, it is going to be restricted between plus or minus 1. Cos takes a maximum value of plus 1 or minus 1, plus 1 to minus 1. This is the limit of RHS. So what we do is we'll take a plus 1 here, we'll take a similar minus 1 here. So we'll try to restrict this function by drawing lines like this. Similarly here, we'll try to draw similar curves of this sort. Let us suppose that this is plus 1 and this is minus 1, right? So wherever you get the intersection, this point is cos Ka is equal to plus 1. And wherever you get the intersection here, it's cos Ka is equal to minus 1. Please recall, Ka equal to plus 1 means cos pi minus 1, cos 0 or cos 2n pi. It is going to be plus 1. So wherever you get here, it is something like 2 pi, 4 pi or so on. So this one is 2 pi and this one is going to be Ka is equal to pi, or K is equal to pi by A. As this is possible on the other side also, you can say K equal to plus or minus pi by A, because it's cos is an even function. So you can say Ka is equal to plus or minus 2 pi on the other side, right? So something strange is happening over here. So whenever this cos goes to minus 1, that is cos is becoming plus or minus pi by A, something strange is happening. Recall Bragg's law. You may think, why Bragg's law you are bringing here. It will become clear because in this entire discussion we are treating electron as a wave, because quantum mechanics says that every particle has an associated wave, de Broglie matter wave. So as we are dealing with electron as a wave, if you can imagine the atoms, if the atoms are sitting like this, as the electrons are just sneaking through this as a wave, so you can expect a diffraction, Bragg's law for diffraction, X-ray diffraction. It may happen here, and fortunately it is happening. So that thing you can understand by considering, atom and atom are separated by a distance of a here, in our case, lattice separation. And Bragg's law says that the X-rays will be reflected, or maximas are obtained. Maxima in a sense, X-ray and X-ray will superpose with each other in a direction where 2d sine theta is equal to n lambda, plus or minus n lambda. Sorry, where lambda is the X-ray wavelength. Here in this case, if you can imagine electron as a wave, so the electron's matter wave is this. Let us check whether it happens or not. And if you consider a one-dimensional array of atoms, like this, you have atoms. These are atoms, and an electron is simply coming like this. Let us say an electron is traveling this way. I am talking about one dimension. So the electron's plane wave, as we said, electron is a plane wave. So these plane waves are simply traveling like this, because we know in the Bloch theorem itself we said electron admits plane wave like solutions. So these plane waves of electrons are simply passing through, and the gap between neighbor and neighbor, I mean this and this. If you take any neighboring atoms, we know this is A. It is something like a lattice spacing, lattice or interplanar separation, not lattice spacing, interplanar separation. So if you imagine this as first plane, second plane, third plane, like that, so the interplanar spacing in our case it is just A, so it is going to be 2A and sine theta. See, electron is coming like this. So the angle between electron's motion and the plane is of course 90-degree, because this is the plane, these are the atomic planes. So these atomic planes are being hit by electron. So the angle between the plane of atoms and the electron's direction is of course 90-degree. So theta in this case is going to be 90-degree. So sine 90 will become 1. So 2a into 1 is equal to just lambda. Or in other words, lambda equal to 2a. Okay. So lambda equal to 2a. This is one expression. Please remember. Now, if you calculate k, is it not k equal to 2 pi by lambda? And if you substitute lambda here, it is not nothing but 2 pi by 2a. So is it not giving you pi by a? Or more precisely, you can add plus or minus here, lambda equal to plus or minus 2a. After all, this is plus or minus 2a. It is giving you plus or minus pi by a. The answer is now obtained. So whenever electron is just sneaking through all these positive ions, it is just behaving like a wave, and its electron matter wave gets diffracted at every k equal to plus or minus pi by a. That's why only at these points something strange is happening. That's why we got these boundaries on the right hand side. The right hand side function as cos k equal to plus 1 and cos k equal to minus 1. So these things are actually describing the electron matter wave. Fine. So anyway, this is plus or minus pi by a, and this is giving you plus or minus 2 pi by a, 4 pi by a. Anyway, this is satisfied. Definitely the other will be satisfied, because after all, a 2 factor is missing. If this is satisfied for all pi, obviously that will also be satisfied. So at every intersection of these points, there the electron matter wave is getting diffracted. That's what we can conclude. And anyway, let me conclude this faster. So you can clearly see certain regions are formed here, where the regions are called forbidden regions. Sorry, something went wrong. Let me erase this. I have made a mistake here. I should not cover this region. Let me, right, okay. So there are regions which are forbidden here, like this. This is one, and similarly, other one going to be something like this. See, the drawing is not that good. Please try to accept that these are some zones which are allowed and forbidden. I'll explain in a moment. Try to understand. See, if you look at this region, you have alpha s. This axis is alpha a. So for all these alpha s which lie in between this region, the left hand side of this equation has values which lie in between plus 1 and minus 1. So can it not take some of the solutions in that region? Because after all, this right hand side is saying it lies in between plus or minus 1. So this also has some plus or minus 1 solutions. So if the left hand side is entirely above this plus 1 or below minus 1, you cannot expect a solution, because both will not agree with each other. So if at all this function lies in between plus 1 and minus 1, there you may expect solution to this region. So the solutions will exist only in the region which is demarcated by this, right? So these regions are the so-called allowed regions. So this is what we call as allowed. The green regions are allowed, in which this equation is satisfied, whereas the blue regions are what we call as forbidden, right? Why? Because between this and this, see, the curve is encroaching the minus 1. So whatever value of alpha a, that is going to give left hand side which is greater than minus 1, I mean below the minus 1. So you cannot satisfy the equation. So these regions are forbidden, and once again at some point you are going to have some regions where allowed. So like that, this entire graph is going to have allowed forbidden regions. So all these green shaded regions are allowed, all these blue shaded regions are forbidden. So this originates bands. Energy bands are formed using this, right? So I'll further extend this in the next video to the formation of energy bands, and you can also conclude that what happens when you calculate the N effective, etc. That part I'll do in the next video. So I'll conclude up to here. Please copy this graph, and I'll continue in the next class. Thank you.